The Buddha reminds us that the root of much of our suffering is the illusion of a fixed, separate self. This self-centered lens narrows our vision, fueling desires, fears, and the endless struggle to protect an identity that is never truly solid. Yet, when we learn to see beyond the boundaries of I and mine, a profound shift begins, our heart opens. Compassion flows naturally, and the mind rests in a deeper freedom. On the Dharma journey, we walk together into this timeless wisdom, not as abstract philosophy, but as a living practice that transforms how we relate to ourselves, to others, and to life itself. Here, the Buddha's insights are not relics of the past, but guiding lights for a more awake, compassionate, and liberated way of being. Have you ever asked yourself, why do I always put myself before everything else? It sounds like a simple question, but if you look deeply, you'll realize it touches one of the deepest layers of the human mind. In every thought, every decision, every reaction, the self sits at the center. It wants to protect itself, gain advantages for itself, and assert itself in front of the world. Yet few people see that this self-centered orbit is the very root of much of the suffering they carry. Modern society glorifies competition. From a young age, we're taught to stand out, to prove our worth, to succeed according to fixed standards. Social media amplifies this even more. Every photo, every post, every achievement is a way for the self to display itself and seek approval. But the same environment fuels constant comparison, and comparison always comes with insecurity. When we put the self first, we look at life through a narrow lens. Every situation is evaluated by how it benefits or harms us. When others succeed, we may feel threatened. When someone criticizes us, we rush to defend our image. Every relationship becomes a subtle transaction, where we subconsciously want to take more than we give. It's a bundle of memories, beliefs, experiences, and countless stories we tell about ourselves. Whenever we cling to a certain image, I am competent, I am a failure, I am a victim, we trap ourselves within our own limitations. And when that image gets shaken, insecurity and emptiness rush in. The modern world encourages confidence. Instead of fortifying the self, it invites us to see its impermanent, selfless nature. When we realize that the self is just an ongoing process with no independent essence, we begin to loosen our grip. Then, instead of seeing others as rivals, we see they are also walking through fears, worries, and desires just like us. Compassion arises naturally, not because we're trying to be better, but because the walls of ego have thinned. This shift doesn't happen overnight. We've spent a lifetime revolving around the self, so when we start to change, the ego reacts fiercely. It whispers, if you don't protect yourself, who will? If you don't assert yourself, who will notice you? This is where mindfulness practice becomes vital. Mindfulness helps us notice that voice without obeying it, to see it as a mental habit rather than an absolute truth. As we stop putting the self above all else, something remarkable happens. Conversations become deeper because we truly listen instead of waiting for our turn to speak. We find joy in helping without the need for credit. We feel relieved when we no longer have to maintain a flawless image. And most importantly, we discover a new kind of freedom, the freedom from always having to be someone in the eyes of the world. Perhaps the question, why do I always put myself before everything, will open a long journey. But if we dare to walk it, we'll see the walls that separate us from life slowly dissolve. There's a story from the life of the Buddha that speaks directly to the struggle of selfishness. One day, a man came to the Buddha, carrying in his heart a deep but hidden misery. On the outside, he appeared confident, even proud, successful in business, respected in his community. But beneath the surface, his world was small, confined entirely to the borders of his own desires. Every action he took, every choice he made, was weighed by one measure alone: what do I get out of it? Over time, his relationships became strained. Friends stopped visiting. When he heard the Buddha was nearby, curiosity pulled him forward. Perhaps this teacher could offer him a way to be even more successful, to secure more happiness for himself. Sitting before the Buddha, the man asked, "What is the path to peace?" The Buddha looked at him gently and replied, "You speak of peace, but your cup is already full of yourself. When a vessel is filled only with its own image, no water can enter, no nourishment can remain. A heart closed to others will always thirst." The man frowned. "So you mean I should give away what is mine?" The Buddha smiled. "When you open your hand, the universe can place something in it. When you open your heart, your suffering begins to dissolve. The more you cling to I, me, mine, the heavier your burden becomes. But when you live with compassion, the burden lightens. When the heart opens, suffering shrinks." Something stirred within the man. For the first time, he noticed the quiet emptiness inside him, a space he had been trying to fill with possessions, achievements, and praise. But none of it lasted. He realized that he had been living in a prison with walls built from his own self-interest. In the days that followed, the man began to practice small acts of kindness, not for recognition. This story is not about becoming a saint overnight. It's about taking the first step toward opening the heart, even if just a little. The teaching is timeless: when the heart expands, suffering contracts. In a world that constantly tells us to look out for ourselves first, this wisdom feels like a quiet rebellion, a reminder that true peace comes not from building taller walls, but from opening wider doors. Understanding the root of self-centered thinking. Self-centered thinking doesn't appear out of nowhere, it has deep roots in the human mind, shaped by our survival instincts, fears, and desires. If we want to truly free ourselves from it, we need to look beyond the surface and understand where it comes from. Even in modern life, where physical survival is often not under immediate threat, our mind still reacts as if it were. We grasp at resources, opportunities, and even attention, believing that if we don't secure them for ourselves, we'll lose out. Fear of loss also fuels selfish thinking. We fear losing what we have, our possessions, our relationships, our status. This fear can make us defensive, guarded, and unwilling to share. When we live in constant protection mode, our world shrinks. We see others as competitors rather than companions, threats rather than fellow travelers on the same path. Then there is the craving for recognition. Deep down, most of us long to be seen, valued, and affirmed. This desire isn't inherently wrong, it's a reflection of our human need for connection. But when it becomes an obsession, it traps us in a cycle of comparison and competition. We begin to measure our worth against others, chasing approval as if it were the key to happiness. Buddhist teachings point us toward a radically different view, anatta, or no self. This doesn't mean we don't exist, but rather that the self we cling to is not a fixed, independent entity. It's a collection of changing thoughts, feelings, and experiences, ever shifting, never solid. When we see this clearly, we realize that protecting the ego at all costs is like guarding a mirage. The fear, greed, and grasping tied to self-centeredness begin to loosen their grip. Understanding anatta transforms the way we relate to others. If there is no permanent, separate me, then the boundary between me and you becomes less rigid. Your joy is not separate from mine. Your suffering is not unrelated to mine. Compassion grows naturally, because helping others becomes as natural as caring for our own body. But this shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires honest self-reflection, mindfulness, and the willingness to question long-held assumptions. Each time we notice the mind turning inward in fear or greed, we can pause and ask, is this coming from my true nature, or from a mistaken idea of who I am? Over time, this awareness opens space for generosity, patience, and a quieter mind. The root of selfish thinking may be deep, but it is not unchangeable. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that all conditioned states, including self-centeredness, are impermanent. With understanding and practice, We can move from a life driven by fear and desire toward one guided by compassion and freedom. And as our heart expands, the prison walls of the self begin to crumble, leaving us open, connected, and at peace. The harm of living only for yourself. When we live with the mindset that our own needs, desires, and comfort are the center of the universe, it becomes a prison. Inside it, there is no real warmth, no deep connection, and no space for love to flow. One of the greatest losses of self-centered living is the erosion of connection. Human beings are wired to thrive in relationships built on empathy, trust, and mutual care. When every action is filtered through the question, "What's in it for me?" others eventually sense that they are not valued for who they are, but only for what they can provide. Friendships become shallow. Family bonds weaken. Even in romantic love, the more we fear losing them. This constant vigilance breeds anxiety, worrying about what others might take from us, whether we are being overlooked, or if someone else is getting more recognition than we are. Jealousy creeps in when we compare ourselves to others, and dissatisfaction grows when reality fails to match our inflated expectations. It's like being perpetually thirsty, drinking from a cup with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much we get, it's never enough. From a Buddhist perspective, this is a profound spiritual obstacle, making it harder to experience the truth of anatta, the absence of a fixed, independent self. Without seeing beyond this illusion, we remain trapped in the cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. Moreover, self-centeredness blinds us to the beauty and richness of life that comes from giving. We miss the joy of being part of something larger than ourselves. The deep peace that arises when we act from compassion rather than calculation. Happiness becomes a fleeting visitor instead of a steady companion. Because it's built on unstable ground, the constant shifting sands of me and mine. In truth, living only for ourselves is like planting seeds in barren soil. No matter how much effort we put into guarding those seeds, they will not bear fruit. It is only when we open our hearts, allowing generosity, empathy, and understanding to take root, that life begins to blossom. When we understand this deeply, we start to see that self-centeredness doesn't just keep us from connecting with others, it keeps us from connecting with the very essence of happiness itself. By loosening our grip on self. The timeless wisdom of the Buddha. In a world where self-interest often takes center stage, the Buddha's teachings offer an antidote that feels just as relevant today as it did over 2,500 years ago. Among his most powerful teachings is the cultivation of the four immeasurables: loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. And they have the power to dismantle the walls of selfishness that isolate us from one another. Loving kindness, metta, is the foundation. It begins with a simple yet radical shift, to genuinely wish for the happiness of all beings, without conditions. This is not just about being polite or friendly. The constant urge to protect our ego begins to fade because we realize that another person's joy does not diminish our own, in fact, it can add to it. Compassion, karuna, follows naturally. It is the deep, heartfelt desire to alleviate the suffering of others. Compassion doesn't mean feeling sorry for someone from a distance, it means being willing to step closer. To see their pain as real and valid, and to respond with care. In Buddhist wisdom, compassion is not weakness, it is courage. It allows us to face suffering without turning away. And when we see others through the lens of compassion, our self-centeredness loosens its grip, because we begin to recognize that our well-being is interwoven with theirs. Imagine a life where someone else's triumph fills you with light instead of resentment. That is the joy that mudita offers. Equanimity, upekkha, ties it all together. It is the steady, balanced mind that remains open and kind, regardless of life's ups and downs. Equanimity does not mean apathy or detachment from life, rather. We begin to see the bigger picture, that life is constantly changing, and clinging only brings suffering. When these four immeasurables take root, the self-centered mind naturally begins to dissolve. The me first perspective shifts into a we're all in this together understanding. It's not about forcing ourselves to be less selfish through willpower alone. It's about cultivating qualities that make selfishness irrelevant. Loving kindness makes us want to include others. Compassion makes us want to help them. Sympathetic joy makes us want to celebrate them. And equanimity keeps our hearts steady enough to do it all without burnout or resentment. The Buddha didn't teach these qualities as lofty ideals for monks in distant monasteries, he offered them as practical tools for everyday people navigating the messiness of human life. We can practice metta toward the barista who makes our coffee, karuna toward a friend going through heartbreak, mudita for a coworker who got the promotion we wanted. Selfishness shrinks our world down to the size of our own concerns. The four immeasurables expanded until it includes all of life. And in that expansion, something beautiful happens. We realize that the happiness we've been chasing was never meant to be hoarded, it was meant to be shared. It's not about fighting or suppressing your ego, that usually makes it stronger. Instead, it's about becoming deeply aware of its movements. Something you dislike, or an opinion you hold strongly, pause for a brief moment. Take a slow breath, and silently ask yourself, is this only about me? That question acts like a small flashlight, shining into the dark corners of the mind where the ego hides. It's not meant to make you feel guilty or wrong, but to help you see clearly. Often, we don't even realize how much of our mental energy revolves around protecting, defending, or promoting our sense of self. This self-centered loop can make life feel tight and narrow, like we're living inside a cage we can't see. As you keep practicing, you might notice that many of your emotional reactions, irritation when someone disagrees, disappointment when plans change, or jealousy when someone else succeeds, have the same root: the ego's need to feel important, special, or in control. By asking, is this only about me, you loosen the grip of that need. The ego's patterns fade not because you push them away, but because they no longer feel as compelling. This is like realizing a door was never locked, you simply walk out into a wider space. Over time, this practice creates a subtle but powerful shift. You start responding to life with more spaciousness and less reactivity. You listen more deeply. You speak with more care. You begin to notice the shared humanity in others, rather than only their differences from you. And in those moments, the boundary between me and you starts to dissolve. Mindfulness doesn't erase the ego entirely, nor should it. We need a healthy sense of self to function in the world. But it helps us live with the ego in balance. So it becomes a helpful servant rather than a controlling master. If you try this for just a few minutes each day, you might be surprised at how much lighter you feel. The world hasn't changed, but the way you meet it has. And sometimes, that is the real liberation. Cultivating daily compassion. Compassion doesn't have to be a grand gesture or a dramatic sacrifice. In fact, the most transformative compassion often happens quietly, in the unnoticed spaces of daily life. It's in the moment you pause to really listen when someone is speaking, without rushing to give advice or pass judgment. It's in the time you hold the door for a stranger, smile at the cashier, or let another driver merge into your lane without irritation. It's in the small yes you offer when you could have ignored someone's need. Buddhist teachings often speak of dana, the practice of generosity, not just as giving material things, but as offering your presence, your patience, and your kindness. Dana is about loosening the tight grip of mine and me, and realizing that what we give away freely multiplies within us. Every act of generosity softens the ego and strengthens the heart. One of the simplest ways to live compassion is to start the day with a quiet intention: may I be a source of ease for someone today. And you offer to share their workload. Maybe a friend calls in distress, and instead of offering solutions, you offer silence and presence. These acts don't just help others. They reshape you from within. When you give without expecting return, you begin to notice a subtle shift in the way you see the world. People are no longer strangers but fellow travelers. Their burdens become something you can help lighten, even just a little, and in doing so, you lighten your own. This is the paradox of compassion: the more you give, the less you feel depleted. The heart has a way of replenishing itself when it is open. The Buddha taught that compassion and wisdom are like the two wings of a bird. Without one, we cannot fly. Compassion becomes less of a practice and more of who you are. It's not something you turn on and off, it's the ground you stand on. Try this, today. Choose one small act of kindness that costs you nothing but attention. Hold the door. Let someone speak without interrupting. Offer a sincere compliment. Notice how it feels in your body afterward: lighter, warmer, more connected. That's the seed of compassion growing. Nurture it. And watch it change not only the lives of others but the landscape of your own heart. Letting go of comparison, walking the Buddha's middle path. In the age of social media, comparing ourselves to others has almost become an unconscious habit. Just a few minutes scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, and you're bombarded with images of luxurious vacations, stunning homes, perfect bodies, and glittering achievements. And sometimes, you might feel small, inadequate, or as if you're being left behind. This not only drains your energy but also slowly erodes your joy in life. The Buddha saw this over 2,500 years ago, not through social media, but through the very nature of the human mind. He understood that rivalry and comparison are among the root causes of suffering. To break free from this cycle, he taught the middle path, a way of living that avoids both extremes. Neither chasing excessive desire nor suppressing oneself through harsh self-denial. When you walk the middle path, you begin to realize that your worth is not defined by whether you are better or worse than someone else. You don't need to win an invisible race, because in truth, there is no race at all. Everyone is walking their own journey, at their own pace, with their own unique experiences. Letting go of comparison doesn't mean you stop striving or abandon your dreams. On the contrary. Or reaches a big goal, instead of letting jealousy speak, try offering a heartfelt congratulations. This may feel difficult at first, as the mind is conditioned to compare, but with persistence, you'll find your heart becoming lighter. In Buddhism, this is called mudita, sympathetic joy, the genuine happiness we feel when others are happy. Mudita is like a cool breeze that soothes the heat of envy, opening your heart and bringing you peace. Another way to nurture mudita is to practice daily gratitude. Each morning or evening, write down 3 things you are grateful for in your own life, whether it's a warm cup of coffee, a friend who always listens, or simply a beautiful morning sky. When your mind is full of gratitude, there's little room left for comparison. Remember, every person who appears in your life is a mirror reflecting something within you. Can create the life you desire, on your own terms, without copying anyone else. Most importantly, return to the question the Buddha always encouraged: does this lead me to peace? If comparison brings you unrest, gently set it down. If congratulating others makes you feel lighter, do it often. Letting go of comparison not only calms your mind but also deepens your connection with others. You stop seeing them as competitors and start seeing them as fellow travelers on the same long road, each with their own joys, sorrows, and lessons. When you walk the middle path, you are no longer swept away by society's false standards or invisible races. You begin to live more authentically, more freely, and more joyfully, not because you've surpassed anyone else, but because you've surpassed the urge to compare within yourself. Transforming wisdom into a way of life. Transforming wisdom into a way of life is not merely an abstract concept but a practical journey anyone can embark on to turn profound understanding into actions that enrich personal life, family, and society. In an increasingly complex and turbulent world, we avoid unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings that can hurt ourselves and colleagues. For example, when dealing with a difficult situation with a coworker, instead of responding with anger, defensiveness, or blame, we try to listen deeply and understand the real causes, maybe fear, pressure, or ignorance. From there, we respond with patience, wisdom, and goodwill, creating a more harmonious and productive work environment. Wisdom becomes the glue that connects and enriches our professional lives, turning wisdom into a way of life within family. Family is the closest yet often the most emotionally charged relationship. Applying living wisdom in family dynamics helps reduce conflict and deepen mutual understanding. Instead of letting emotions explode and hurt loved ones, we learn to recognize our own and others' states and ask ourselves, is my reaction truly coming from love, or from the ego seeking satisfaction? When parents, children, spouses. This question tests whether wisdom is truly operating in the right direction. In community activities, civil society, or charitable movements, living wisdom enables us to act based on genuine compassion, understanding, and responsibility, not personal ambition or superficial success. Such actions not only produce positive outcomes but also spread uplifting energy, helping build a just, peaceful, and thriving society. The practice of self-inquiry. The transformative question. One of the most effective methods to transform wisdom into a way of life is cultivating the habit of self-questioning before reacting or deciding. This simple yet transformative question is this coming from love or from my ego? This opens space for us to recognize the true motivation behind our actions and choose wiser responses. For instance, when feeling hurt or wronged, instead of blaming, getting angry, or seeking revenge, we listen to the pain inside and respond with forgiveness and compassion. Or when receiving praise, instead of arrogance and pride, we remain humble and aware that all success comes from support and favorable conditions. This habit does not form naturally, it requires consistent practice, especially in difficult situations. Over time, it develops a mindful consciousness that chooses actions based on wisdom and love rather than instinct and ego, making wisdom inseparable from everyday life. Connecting wisdom with meditation and mindfulness. Supporting this process, meditation and mindfulness play vital roles. Meditation allows us to observe our minds objectively, recognizing hidden emotions, thoughts, and motivations. Mindfulness keeps us present in each moment, preventing us from being swept away by unconscious reactions or negative emotions. When we focus on the breath and observe thoughts without judgment, we expand our capacity to see the inner truth, allowing wisdom to grow naturally and deeply. This habit helps us automatically and honestly ask, is this coming from love or my ego? Making wisdom a moment-by-moment practice. Ultimately, wisdom truly matters only when expressed through action. These are the small daily decisions, from speaking kindly rather than harshly, helping others quietly, to maintaining calm in adversity and accepting what cannot be changed. Such seemingly small acts, when performed with wisdom and love, create tremendous transformative power in individual and communal life. Step by step, day by day, we build a meaningful life that blends wisdom and compassion, turning wisdom into a living path, a guiding light in every circumstance. Conclusion, an invitation, opening the door to freedom and peace through letting go. Throughout our life's journey, we often find ourselves trapped by the layers of the ego, the selfish ego, the protective ego, the ego that seeks control and victory. It's natural to cling tightly to our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs as if they were shields protecting our identity, dignity, and worth. Yet, the deeper truth is this: it's precisely what we hold on to so tightly that keeps us confined, caught in cycles of fear, suffering, and unrest. Letting go of selfish thinking, in other words, releasing the ego, is not a loss, emptiness, or self-abandonment. Rather, it is the gateway to true freedom, a liberation from the strongest invisible chains. When we dare to face our inner attachments, when we choose to release the ideas that put ourselves at the center, we begin to see a wider horizon, a horizon filled with peace and boundless love. Letting go is not about resignation or passive endurance, it's a wise, conscious choice to no longer allow negative emotions like anger, jealousy, greed, or fear to dictate our lives. Only when we are no longer suffocated by selfishness can we live fully, peacefully, making this world a gentler, more loving place. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss these meaningful teachings and valuable lessons on living with wisdom and love. If you find this video helpful, please like and share it, and most importantly, leave a comment. We genuinely look forward to hearing your story and reflections. The journey of letting go of the ego is a journey of rebirth, the rebirth of the soul, the awakening of the heart, and the harmony with the vast universe. Every small step is a miracle, a deep connection with ourselves and humanity. You are not alone on this path, and the strength of our community will be an endless source of support as we walk together. A few gentle reminders to remember. Letting go is not losing but liberating. True freedom comes when we are no longer bound by ego and negative emotions. Genuine peace resides in a heart opened by compassion. Every small act of kindness is a step on the path to awakening. Honest connection with ourselves and others is the foundation of lasting happiness. Thank you for taking the time to listen and walk alongside us. Remember, each of us can be a light, shining for ourselves and for the world. Let's sow the seeds of compassion together, day by day.